one of my favourite paths that I take my solitary photo walks along. Not the ones with Sir Barkalot, because frankly he'd get lost in the long grass of this particular path near Brimpton. Is where I am today with your letters. Let me try and navigate through this to start with. I wish I'd brought long sleeves. It's been very warm in the UK. Long sleeves does not seem appropriate today, but to navigate through look at these. These are not nettles or even thistles. These are triffids, so they are. Let me get a picture of where I start my photo walk today. Although I don't think I'm going to be doing a lot of pictures. I think I'm going to be doing a lot of reading of your letters. I'm collecting a fair amount of insects on my top. Here we go. Using my X100V. What are you? Ooh, you don't look nice. F4, 160 ISO, shutter speed, 1/40th. There we go. A sketchbook image to start the day. I'm picking up your letters and already, God, dear, there's insects all over it. I'm going to talk about them properly in a moment and chat about change. But thank you to our wonderful sponsor, MPB, the largest global platform to buy, sell and trade in used photo and video gear. Committed to making gear more accessible and affordable. But I want to thank them out the traps because they've made this show possible. And to a great extent, they've made my camera bag possible, as I buy and trade a lot through MPB. So today is the first of our end-of-month specials, where, with the help of your letters and friends of the show we hear more regularly as guests, we're going to take a topic and have a focused conversation about it, so to speak, as we both walk along this path together. And I'm happy that we're starting with something that's part of all our lives as creatives. And if it isn't for you, I can only assume that you're one of the truer purists of the craft who make pictures and take walks because you want to, not because you feel any desire at all to share. But this is a long show today. Looking at the letters I've got and the friends' interviews that I've recorded. So I want to thank you from the outset for listening to it. If it helps, chop it up into a few parts and come back over the next few days to it. Now, I didn't and don't want this to be a whinge-a-thon about social media, because that would be fairly tiring and it would be a very easy thing to do. I think in places it may sound or seem like that. But I want this show to look at social media, unpick it, unpack it, and really I want today's show to cock your head to one side a little, as if to think, I'd not thought about that before. Although inevitably there will be a fair amount of venting. Sometimes that can be good for us as well. Social media has brought to me so many opportunities in terms of meeting people, chatting with people. And actually it's facilitated me to build this. This thing that I'm doing now, walking with you, hearing the birds sing. They were singing much louder a moment ago, and it's quite early in the morning. Putting one foot in front of another, it's a perfect example of building content and being at the very heart of social media. This is media, and it's social. You write in, we talk and share, ergo, social media. Social media and podcasting as a part of it has meant that I can make something like this. Because prior to this, the only channel, the only outlet really for me was radio. And with, I suppose, nuanced local exceptions around the world, essentially you could only play on the radio if you owned a mast, which was licensed from somebody wearing a suit who made lots of rules that didn't really make a lot of sense. And much of the time, it didn't meet our individual needs. Perhaps once or twice a week at 10 p.m, tucked out of the way, There's the country music special. Enjoy. Anyway, today is a special about how social media has impacted, affected, and perhaps even altered our lives, our art, and the way we communicate it. If you use it, and this podcast is it, as we've already established now, I think, I hope you'll be interested to hear how others engage with it, social media that is, and hear their genuine joy and their fears and hopes. It's a special that features your letters too, but it seems I've created a monster. You've created a monster that just doesn't have the time to feature the full-length letters on the show and all the letters that you've sent in so kindly and so generously on the show. So I've featured some here. Some will come on the Extra Mile show, but all of the first, I suppose, tranche will be in full on a special page that I've made about social media. Because I thought, well, you've taken time and effort and you've given me some really considered, thoughtful letters on this subject. So I wanted to feature them in full on a special page that will feature within our photo essays. There's a tab on the website on photowalk.show. So they'll be there, but fear not. If your letter is not read today, it will be featured on a show in the coming months. And alongside your letters today, well, the interviews that we have are slightly shorter features, if you like, featurettes, featuring friends of the show, including Sean Tucker, the photographer and YouTuber, Emily Renier, a social photographer and Fujifilm ambassador, Phil Penman, who turned his news and celeb career into a successful street photography business and life in New York, our street mentor, Valerie Jardin, and the man who started this episode, really, this debate, our head of flashing buttons and things that need rebooting, head of PWIT, Neil Ford. I'm not quite sure, of course, whether he'd want PWIT written on the door of his office. But I'd like to start by playing what those in the business of radio might call a package, or in Instagramese, an audiogram. Here's just a couple of minutes of what you're about to hear in today's show. I don't know whether today's show will change your mind or influence you, using a small I there, but I'm pretty sure it's going to have you think more broadly about that thing with tentacles called social media.
Today on the Photo Walk.
Any job's going to have aspects of it that are difficult and not very nice, but if you treat it as part of your job with a caveat of having conversation by the water cooler, which would be your conversations on there with some friends and whatnot, doesn't mean they're not friends, doesn't mean they're not authentic conversations.
So without social media, I think I would have been making bodies of images that tell stories that could go in books. That would be the way that I'd want to get it out to the world, the traditional monograph.
So I've got one which I use predominantly for my events coverage, so park runs and other events. That's one account. And then I set the second one up, which was for sketchbook images, the day-to-day stuff, the something and nothings that I go out and take. And I just wanted to keep them separate. So I did that. And then I was kind of going, but why am I posting these?
There are two dangers with social media, I think. One, to shoot for an audience. Two, to spend too much time on it. So if you can manage those two things, it's a good experience.
And then all of a sudden it was like negative 10 people a day. And I was like, well, I haven't done anything different. I'm still doing the work. I'm still getting out there and shooting, and I'm still posting consistently and doing what I figure to be right. But is someone just flipped a switch?
As soon as you start curating a narrative for your life, you're putting out a message out there. And therefore, if they're curating that, can they then understand that whatever they're seeing is not real?
I think to grow as a photographer, you have to back yourself, often against the attention you're getting in images that's positive, to say, I can't be seduced by the images I post that everyone thinks is great and just stick to that as a trick, as an easy trick to pull off. I have to know when something I've taken is better than that, even if the internet doesn't agree.
You know, you take these pictures and then, but how do you find the person that's interested? And that's becoming the bigger problem.
Hashtag.
But the hashtags don't work.
I can see that a reel will get sometime 60% engagement from followers and 40% from non-followers. Doesn't mean that those non-followers will automatically follow you. Depends on the reel, but that's a good way to get visibility from outside.
Are you doing this for a living, or is this something for fun? If it's for fun, don't take it so seriously. But if it's your living and you're paying your bills and your rent, then yeah, you better take it bloody seriously.
These social media platforms that we use to share our work, they're a gift because we get to make something and share it with somebody on the other side of the world, potentially within seconds. That's the first time in human history that's happened. That's amazing.
So you end up, you sign up for something, and then 3 weeks later you stop using it because you can't do this 24/7. This is the problem. All of these platforms, there's now too many of them, and it was always going to happen because it's technology.
Ooh, look at this. A tree has come crashing across the path. I don't know when. Did it maybe just fall over the last couple of days? Let me put your letters down and make a photograph. I'm gonna crawl underneath it. Right. It doesn't look quite so impressive in my frame here, but I'll make a picture. In fact, I'll get down low, and then there'll be some sort of context, I suppose. The path continues beyond the tree. F4, shutter speed 1/2/5, ISO. It's quite dark at the moment. Have I got my neutral density filter on? Is that what's going on? No. I am out early-ish. No, that can't be 2000 ISO, can it? No. Well, it says so. Here we go. The blue skies shining at me that we've had over the last week. It's a bit more blur this morning, but that's going to burn off very soon. I know it. I'll climb underneath that in a second. Welcome along as we make our photo walk together. It's a show where we walk and make pictures, photographically sketchbooking our time together each week, enjoying the letters and inspirational stories that you've sent in, and listening back to special studio guests from around the world. I'll start with your letters in a moment, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to thank our sponsor MPB, the largest global platform to buy, sell and trade in used photo and video gear. Did you know they recirculate? Here's one for a pub quiz, just in case you ever get asked. It would be a pub quiz that I'd like to attend because it would be very photographic. They recirculate 570,000 cameras and lenses a year. MPB is the largest global platform to buy, sell and trade photo and video kit. A simple, safe and circular way to trade, upgrade and get paid for the kit that you no longer need. Come on, look in your cupboards. There will be stuff that you haven't used for years. Be honest with me. That could be new for somebody else. And by safe, I mean MPB is not a marketplace. They buy directly from us, visual storytellers, and evaluate all our stuff before reselling it as MPB approved kit. Buy, sell and trade. Use camera gear with MPB or go to mpb.com/change. Right, social media then. This is an open book in terms of the platforms you wish to talk about, though you'll hear a fair amount of chat today about Instagram. But before you say, oh, Neil, I don't use that platform anymore, I think I'll just switch off. No, don't you dare. What I've tried to do is steer the conversation to a broader understanding of what social media means, does, says, and how it feels, even though sometimes it may be through the lens of Instagram today. I'm going to start the conversation with a letter from the mailbag from a good friend of the show, Mike Miller. Now, the full letter, as I said before, I will link through the show page today, to the photo essay page under the story called Social Media, Help Me Please, with a few exclamation marks. This page will be a booklet of thoughts, I think. Chapters of thoughts. It's worth a visit with a coffee and Garibaldi, or 8. So, from Mike. I found a few moments to put fingers to keyboard, Neil, give you my thoughts and feelings about the subject. Mike, by the way, answered some of the questions I posted as a shizzle, if you like, for the show, about a month or so back. I asked some questions just to get the conversation flowing, and Mike has reacted to those. What's your favourite platform and why? Google Maps, says Mike, and YouTube. I enjoy spending downtime watching videos about photography and other subjects for entertainment and information. On the topic of likes, there's a saying, compete against yourself, not against others. Oh, amen to that, Mike. As a goalkeeper, I spent years internalizing and analyzing what happened and what I learned from every situation, regardless of what the outcome was. But I learned to tune out what others said and to just get on with things. The only opinion that mattered to me was my own. After more than 35 years of practicing photography, I don't feel the need to post my images so that others can criticize, praise, or even steal them. The only opinion that matters to me is how I feel about the image I made. What would the perfect platform look like? Well, the perfect platform would be free to use, says Mike, devoid of adverts, not allow any comments or likes. It would show you the images of the people that you follow, be fully searchable based on keywords, and AI being able to tell you what and who are in images that aren't keyworded. Only individuals could post. It would occasionally show you the posts of creatives that you don't follow, but you may want to follow based on the types of people you presently follow. Edits to the image would be disclosed and viewable in the metadata, and it wouldn't use unethical programming to try and get you to stay on the platform for as long as possible or get you addicted to that platform. Now, interestingly, Mike, your thoughts about only individuals posting and not businesses or organizations. See, this is a very interesting balancing act and a much larger conversation, I think, because what's a business? Essentially, we're a business here, aren't we? The Photo Walk. I'm certainly a business online with my wedding photography. I may have missed a nuance here, and you know me, Mike, it's perfectly possible. But how might you find, just in case I haven't missed a nuance, or maybe I can add this to the conversation, if you had a platform that was only individuals, no businesses, nothing commercial of any kind, any organizations, including podcasts, how might you find creatives like, for example, Sean Tucker, who is an individual, yes, but his raison d'etre for posting a lot of what he does on Insta would be for business, and to drive eyes to his philosophically led YouTube channel. He may disagree with that, but that has to be a reason, surely. And this leaves a very interesting thought, because you've described a platform I think many people would thoroughly enjoy, myself included. But how would a creative with something interesting to say professionally introduce themselves on social media? I'm looking at some of the household large names as well. People like, Joel Meyerowitz comes to mind immediately. If one of the main outlets for their creativity said, waving a finger, you can't play here, how would we meet some of these incredible professional, but individuals, but professionals who have, you could argue, a commercial presence by virtue of the fact they are making money from photography? Which brings me neatly, Mike, you could have written this as a link to my first guest, Sean Tucker. Now, I've split Sean's chat into two parts. It has a fascinating ending as well. Well, I think a fascinating ending. And I'll be playing our studio chats in between your letters. As I attempt to get under this tree that I've just photographed, let me play you part one of my conversation with Sean Tucker. Sean, imagine, if you will, a world without social media. And whether we broadly include YouTube in this, we should really, because YouTube's social media, isn't it? I don't think of YouTube as social media, but it is. It's a massive social media platform. So imagine this world without social media. What kind of art might you be making if social media did not exist, do you think?
I think I'd be doing much the same thing, but just in a different way. I mean, I was creative before social media came around, before it was a thing. I was always trying new things. I was making images before social media, just because I enjoyed doing it. So I think I would have been always doing the same thing, but I think social media has shaped how I do it, like how often I release things and what sort of things I make images of or make films of. And that's for better and for worse, I think. I think it's nice that it kind of directs you towards how to make work that meets an audience, but it also maybe teaches you how to make things that are a bit disparate and too bite-sized rather than doing bodies of work. So without social media, I think I would have been making bodies of images that tell stories that could go in books. That would be the way that I'd want to get it out to the world, the traditional monograph. And with filmmaking, I think it would have been more making longer form documentaries, I think would have been the direction I would have gone. I was already thinking of doing that before social media came around. So same stuff, slightly different format, I think is the answer.
Has social media then, in some respects, thwarted some of your life's plans?
It hasn't thwarted them. It's delayed those in the specifics. I mean, like I haven't produced a monograph because I've been doing other things. I haven't produced a feature-length documentary because I've been doing other things. So it's delayed those, but it's also, on the positive side, it's given me an opportunity to pay my bills doing those things, which I wouldn't have had the luxury of doing before. So the fact that I get to make images and make films and pay my mortgage doing that is a gift that social media has given me, in my case, that helps me to really grow my skill set so that I am a much stronger photographer now. I'm a much stronger filmmaker now, so that when those things do come down the road, I think I hopefully they'll be much better quality than my first attempts would have initially been. It's kind of bought me time.
Well, was Instagram the first social media channel you interacted with, or would it have been YouTube? I'm trying to remember which came first. Oh, well, YouTube would have come first, wouldn't it?
It was Facebook first.
Was it Facebook? I'm leaving out Facebook. That's the obvious one.
Facebook was the first one I kind of jumped on. That would have been about 2006, 2007. But I didn't really, at that time, it was just like, hey, I went to the forest today. Hey, I went to the beach today. It wasn't me trying to be a photographer on there. I only keep Facebook around at the moment because I know particular countries around the world use it more than others. So for me, I know keeping a Facebook page going and advertising videos when they come out there, my Indian audience use Facebook a lot.
Of course.
So they'll see that coming through more than anyone else. So it's just a way to reach your audience.
Yeah. How do you balance this? I'm going to call it pressure, because creating content that comes with a pressure, and you would know this for social media, with maintaining a sort of more artistic integrity. I mean, you've mentioned a few times now within our conversations, and certainly within films of yours that I've watched, that the street pictures embracing this use of shade and shadow and walking into the light, they're surefire stadium pleases, but they're not necessarily what you want to present as you shift forward.
Yeah, there is a difference between the images my audience like and the images I like, for sure. Yeah. And I've talked about it in videos before. When you think about social media, you have to think about who is looking at your social media and who's commenting and who's liking and who's giving you those little button clicks that give us that affirmation that we did a good job. And if we're honest, most of the people interacting around photography on social media are beginner photographers. So it's a big mistake if we start making images to get more likes, because what we're doing is we're making images to appeal to beginners more. And we have to grow at some point. So I have a video going out today, so it will already be out by the time this episode comes out. And the example I give in this video is I was down in London recently and I took 2 images on that trip that meant something to me. I posted them online, both of them street photographs. The one got massive response, like 5 or 6 times the number of interaction that this other image had. Yeah. And it was an image of, there's a hoarding up in Trafalgar Square at the moment of a hand, like a painted hand coming out of a sign, basically. I mean, the obvious thing to do as a street photographer is to stand there and wait for someone to walk past so it looks like the hand's grabbing them. It's a very, very easy juxtaposition image to take. I mean, my friend Josh says it's like a one-line joke. You know what I mean? It's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
That image went massive. People thought, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. It's incredible, mind-blowing. But that's because to a beginner, that is a clever trick. And they're like, oh, that sparks possibilities for them. I was a bit embarrassed about posting it because I'm like, this is such an obvious, cheap trick. But the other image I took was the same day I got on the tube at the end of the day to go back to the hotel. And there was a mother and a son who had just collapsed into each other, falling asleep on the tube because they'd obviously had a long day out. Yeah. The way that the boy's hands were kind of held over the mother's hands and the sort of yellow cast that the tungsten light was giving, I shot it on my phone. It's a soft image. It's grainy. It's not great, but it feels to me like a Renaissance painting. It's beautiful to me when I look at it. That image, everyone was like, it's whatever. I know that image is growth for me. I need to dig in. There's a lot to learn from that image that I need to take. And I think to grow as a photographer, you have to back yourself, often against the attention you're getting in images that's positive, to say, I can't be seduced by the images I post that everyone thinks is great and just stick to that as a trick, as an easy trick to pull off. I have to know when something I've taken is better than that, even if the internet doesn't agree, and follow that to grow.
I would imagine 10, 15 years ago, most people couldn't spell algorithm. At the very most, we've encountered the word during a maths exam, probably. Algorithm? Or that must be something I did when I was a maths student. It seems now it's something we're encouraged to get along with and have a positive relationship with. It's a bit like the drunken uncle you try to avoid at parties. It's a draining thing, I think, the algorithm, for many people. And this doesn't matter whether you're a hobbyist or semi-pro or professional, any other label you like. It's a constant that you hear. It's a drain.
I tend to ignore it. It is my solution. The problem is it changes so often and they're not telling you how it changes. So we just see things take a dip and then we're trying to guess what do they want from us. And then we're trying to read blogs and people who are trying to reverse analyze it. Then you're trying to tweak, twist, and bastardize everything you're putting out to fit what you think it's doing. I mean, we just ruin what we make. And I honestly have got a slightly more stoic philosophical approach to it. I'm going to make what the hell I want to make. And if you like it, you like it, you're going to stick with it. And if you don't, you don't. And if the algorithm doesn't like it, it doesn't like it, but I like it. And if I can't sustain myself or keep going or succeed, quote unquote, with the work that I'm making, maybe it's not for social media. And at some point, I'm going to have to make a shift across. I think we make a big mistake and we make a mess of our output if we're trying to play to that.
Yeah.
I know we're told that's how to every seminar you'll go to about social media, they'll be telling you, like, this is what the algorithm is doing at the moment. This is what you have to do. And most of us are just sitting there and our hearts are sinking, going like, I don't want to do that. That's not the work I want to make. And you have to decide what it's for. If you're doing it because you want, quote unquote, success, you want fame and fortune, then yeah, you don't have a choice. You're going to have to play the game and you're going to lose your art to some extent. But if you're doing it as an artist to share your work and you have this approach of the right audience will find this, I don't know how big or small it will be, but the right people will find it. I think it's easier to take. And the fact is that these social media platforms that we use to share our work, they're a gift because we get to make something and share it with somebody on the other side of the world, potentially within seconds. That's the first time in human history that's happened. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is a gift. But they're companies who are businesses making money. They don't actually care about us as individuals, and they care about their shareholders and making a profit. And so they are going to tweak and turn that algorithm anytime they think they can make even a fraction more profit. And they're not considering how that affects us down the chain. And if we want to use their platforms for free, as we're doing, then unfortunately it's by their rules. And you have to decide as an artist what's important to you. For me, I'm doing it all wrong. Like I make work that isn't algorithm friendly, but it's the work I want to make. And I'm just hoping that the right audience thinks that's enough to keep up with on purpose as well. I think you have to put that algorithm conversation in the right box in your head. You know it's there. You know that it will favor some work over others, but you have to decide first what's the important work you want to make and factor that in. And maybe you do like a 1-for-1 approach. You know, maybe you do like, I'll do one for the algorithm, I'll do one for me. You know, like some actors or filmmakers do. Like, you know,
Yes,
Chris
true.
Nolan goes, I'll do The Dark Knight, but then I'm going to do Interstellar. You know, he's like one for the fans, one for the studios, one for me that I really care about. I think if you just slavishly follow the algorithm, it's just a path to pain because you can't keep up with the changes.
Do it for you is a constant mantra, isn't it? I'm not quite sure how to frame this question, but it's just occurred to me. And I'll stick with Instagram at the moment because that's a platform that so many who listen to this program, including you and I, embrace. And I'm going to use the word enjoy. I enjoy it as a platform as well. I wish there were less adverts. But then, there's no such thing as a free lunch, as my dad said to me many, many years ago. Yeah. The currency of likes, switching on the how many people can see the likes and how many people can't. I've got various platforms. I suppose the two best examples are for the photo walk, I've now switched off the amount of likes. And for my photographic business, I've left them on.
Yeah, I hide all mine because I don't like how it's used as a talent score, as if more likes equals better photograph. I mean, this is the other thing with algorithms, isn't it? All of our engagement on Instagram has tanked in the last few years. That's just happened across the board. So if I took likes seriously, that would mean that I'm a worse photographer now than I was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's not true, because I get less likes on images. But that's not true. It was an algorithmic change. So then what does the number even matter? It doesn't mean anything anymore. You tweaked it, you messed around with it too much. It doesn't say anything about the image at all, useful to me. So I think it's a distraction, and I turn it off to say, just look at the image. You decide if you like it or not. And by the way, I don't go check on my images how many likes they got. Even for myself, I don't look, because it's not important to me at all. If I like an image, that's what matters. If other people do, that's great. It's gratifying, but it doesn't mean it's a better or worse image in the final analysis of it. It's not a talent score. And I do it as well to encourage other people to turn it off. I just think it would be a better world if we killed the score around our work and just took in images as what they are. You know, does it make you think something? Do you like the colors or the aesthetics, or did it hit you at a particular point in the day where you needed a lift because you felt it was saying something to you? That's meaningful stuff. The number attached is irrelevant.
What are your thoughts on the impact of social media then on mental health? My word, this is such a wide subject, but especially when you're a creative. Social media is I think there's so many positives with social media, because it would be very easy in this program to turn it into a gripe session about social media. And I don't want it to, because there's many people that enjoy it. They like using it. It's a great way. It's a free way to get your images out to the world. You've got your gallery. There we go. There's democratization for you. But there is a mental health element to this, and one that's not always positive. Sometimes positive, not always though.
It's mostly negative. I think it's being proved to be mostly negative. Jonathan Haidt's done some interesting stuff on this in the books he's written, because it's been gamified, you know, with scores attached and numbers. People very easily assign personal value to those numbers. So if I have more numbers attached to what I do, it means I'm a better artist, and worse than that, maybe that I'm a valid human being. I think that's very, very detrimental. And as the younger you are, the harder that hits. Obviously, teenagers are battling with that. It's causing no end of anxiety and depression, and we've got a real problem on our hands with that. I mean, that has to get said, because it's been proved scientifically over and over. I don't know what the solution to that is. You know, I've heard people saying, you know, we shouldn't give teenagers phones. Good luck with that. I'm not sure how you enforce that one.
I think the horse has bolted on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And or you know, no phones in schools, like all these things, no social media accounts before the age of 13. Like you can, or you know, even that seems young. I don't know. I think there's an opportunity in it, but we need to do a lot of teaching around it. We need to tell people what this means. And how important it really is, and how valuable it actually is. We need to educate young people, especially about, you know, just because your Instagram has a fifth of your friends' Instagram followings does not mean you're a fifth of the person they are. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything like that. Yeah. It's irrelevant. You're as valid a human being with as much to offer as they are. Putting too much stock in all this, I think, is where the anxiety comes. And I see young photographers all the time, you know, and I can feel the anxiety in the questions they ask. How can I get my work seen by more people on Instagram? And I have to start with them and go, but why do you want that? Like, what's the goal with that? And then it's like, well, you know, then I know that I'm a good photographer. I'm like, no, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean that. I know some fantastic photographers with tiny followings. It doesn't mean that at all. I mean, the example I was given talks is I have a bigger Instagram following than some of the Magnum photographers. Like, think of the absurdity of that. These are the best photographers in the world, and I'm a middling photographer at best, and I have a bigger Instagram following than they do. That is not a talent score. It's not a score of how good my photography is versus theirs. That's ridiculous. So the sooner we get into our heads that the value we attach and the numbers attached to the things that we post online mean anything in terms of how well we're doing, the quicker we can turn down the anxiety about how well I'm doing and how much I have to feed these things to prove my worth as a photographer. That stuff all needs to get decoupled and disconnected, because it's a false pathway in our heads. That it doesn't equal the other. You know, numbers on social media do not equal value. Popularity does not equal mastery. That's not how it works. Just because something you do is popular does not mean it's good. It just means it's popular. And if we start to recalibrate and go, I'm going to make good work and stop worrying about how popular it is, that then becomes a pathway to, I think, making more meaningful work and to more mental health, where we start going, I back myself. I'm more self-contained. I don't need the internet to tell me I do good work. I believe it's good work. And the people in my circle who I trust their opinion, they think it's good work. That's all the value I need. And social media can just become like a way to share work that we turn down the volume on the anxiety around the game of it.
And my thanks to Sean Tucker, who will be back in a while with some more pertinent thoughts about social media and a very, very different kind of why. It's a special week this week about social media. You're listening to The Photo Walk. It's a show for those who find escapism and peace away from the noise of this world, putting miles under our feet and making a picture or two and collecting insects. Just got one in my ear. A picture or two about where we've walked. Did that make any sense? I've just been fishing a fly out my ear. Right, letters. Yes, escape. Letters. Let's continue with some thoughts you've sent in. 2 letters. The first, a few musings I've taken from John Kenny, and then I'll have a second letter going into another guest on the subject of social media. Ultimately, says John, I think a lot of how we feel about social channels is tied into what our expectations are. I know that posting sporadically isn't going to create a large following, but a lot of photographers I admire, well, they don't have large followings. Instead, I try to interact and generally be sociable with those accounts that I find of interest. I purchased the Matt Black course on Magnum Learn a while back. I'll link to Magnum Learn on the show page today. It looks fascinating. It really does. I have to say, I'd like to do the, although I've had the pleasure of speaking with him, I'd like to do the Mark Power one, because that, well, when I searched, that came up first on the Magnum Learn site. Anyway, I purchased a Matt Black course on Magnum Learn a while back and thought you may find this quote useful in terms of the social media debate. He's obviously speaking from the perspective of a photographer working on long-term documentary projects, so it probably isn't relevant to everybody. But he said this: it's not something that's designed for publishing serious work. It's something that's designed for a much fluffier and a much more mundane exchange. It rewards the superficial and the shocking and punishes the thoughtful and the complicated. I suspect you may have some thoughts about that. However, says John, I think I'd miss them if they were gone. The accounts that post and share amazing creative work feel like doorways into different worlds, filled with different perspectives and experiences. My remote and rural location would feel infinitely more isolated without them, I think. It's such a wonderful way to look at social media, a very positive way to look at it. It is, and whatever platform you choose, that, I think, what did you call it? Doorways into different worlds. That, I think, is such a truism. It really is. And this one from Sarah Moorcroft, whose birthday it is today, if you're listening to this on the day it's released, of course. So happy birthday, Sarah. I'll save you the song, but I did sing it in words in an email that I wrote back to you. I feel sure you won't be listening today, that this will be a weekend listen, because you should be out there celebrating today with your friends. Surely you will be doing other things. Hi, Neil. Happy birthday to me. I don't pay much attention to birthdays as a rule. Don't tell my family. But as you have a special show on my one, 28th of June, I thought it would be remiss not to mention it. You're absolutely right, Sarah. I have a friend of mine who every year, he didn't do it this year or the past year, which I was a bit disappointed about. On Facebook, he sends me just one message. He says, jelly and hats. And that's it. And then I feel that my birthday has been observed. You've asked for some thoughts about social media, and as it's an opportunity to distract me from tidying my office, it seems timely to jot some down. I think that I'm one of the fortunates who lived a childhood with no computers, iPads, movable telecommunication devices. I spent my childhood walking my collie dog in the woods, building dens in haystacks, health and safety warning, climbing trees, riding ponies, grazing knees, long bike rides down quiet country lanes, swimming in the sea, playing poo sticks. There's a memory across river bridges. All that's rather tempered my feelings about social media. I would still rather be out there in the fresh air, surrounded by trees and wonderful landscapes, than watching other people doing what I enjoy doing. I do have Facebook with a number of different accounts and pages and groups, one for my personal blathers, one for the Wee Old Schoolhouse Gallery, one for Kintyre Rainforest Alliance, and one for a village art group. I'm not really fussed about whether anybody sees what I write on there, but I do enjoy content from other places. Obvs, the one and only Photo Walk, clearly, yes, Sarah, but also ecology sites about lichen, photo sites. And it's a lovely way to keep in contact with friends on the far side of the world. You're right there. What I can't be doing with is sites that become nasty or angsty, so I remove myself from most of those. Probably my favourite visual social media platform, though, is YouTube. There's some exceptional content, things that I could never do myself. Lessons, ideas, wonderful teachers, and philosophers, not necessarily influencers. I'm not sure I want to be influenced that much. It's too expensive. But all of that brings me onto the wonderful world of podcasts. I assume podcasts are considered social media. I think we've identified that. That is an affirmative, yes. Because to be honest, I probably listen to more podcasts than spend time in front of my screen these days. Of course, I started with you, Neil. I may have to start blushing now. Quick, bring on the sofa of flattery to hide behind. I started with you, Neil, found you when we were decorating the new extension in 2021. And I don't think I've missed an episode since. And that's led me to some other really wonderful content and the best companion ever for car journeys. Wanders in the countryside, baking bread and doing the gardening. If I had to take only one social media platform with me, there's no doubt it would be podcasts. And the Photo Walk would be at the front of that queue. Thank you. Sincerely. But I agree with you. I think podcasts would be on my, that fictional desert island thing that we talk about in homage to the wonderful show on the BBC called Desert Island Discs. I think if I were able, I know that you probably wouldn't be able to download. There's no mast. So there's a technical problem here straight away on the desert island. But if I were able magically somehow to download podcasts, or just take a device that's powered forever with a load of downloaded podcasts, I think that would be what I would choose as well. Oh, by the way, as today is my birthday, says Sarah, I will by now have unboxed my new to me. Now, I think this is it Zuiko? Now, I've heard Zuiko, Zico. It's Olympus anyway, isn't it? 60mm macro lens from MPB to help me with my passion for making the Kintyre rainforests the stars of their own show. These trees don't promote themselves much, not so great at making their own reels, so with their permission, I like to try my best to keep them safe by telling everybody how special they are. With luck, I have a few more birthdays in me. I blooming well hope so, Sarah. And many more hours to spend photographing and telling stories in the woods. But the office, well, that's still in a state, and I'm not allowing myself out until it's more respectable. So that's it from me for now, and I've just been told by my husband that the framed photos on the wall aren't straight, which means he must have put the hangers in wonkily. Warmest regards, Sarah. Sarah, we shall be all round your place later on for jelly and ice cream. Obviously, each of us with spirit levels for the frames. I think the list you described of childhood experiences probably has got a lot of people listening now, all very gooey-eyed. So, time to hear my second guest for this special, a friend of the show and personal friend for a while now, and a Fujifilm UK ambassador. This is Emily Renier.
Emily, I put you down as one of my friends who has a very balanced approach in terms of the professional side of photography and social media, which is relevant today, and the sort of the more personal side of it and how you feel about it. And I think that comes down to a conversation we've had before in terms of your teaching and understanding people. Because social media, even if you're professional, social media still affects you at a personal level as well. I think I think it's very hard to. For me, there doesn't seem to be a real difference between the two. I think I find it as personal as I do professional.
Yeah, I mean, when you said I struck you as a balanced person, that would make me laugh out loud inside, because I don't feel balanced at all. But thanks.
Well, no, you can appear on the very next programme then, or one coming up that's about imposter syndrome, but that's not about this today.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll take that anyway. I'll take the compliment. Well, we were just saying just now, I was talking to a couple of photographers and influencers that have got a really, really large following. You're talking 200,000 plus, and, who've become sort of friends on social media. And I asked them last time when I saw them, how do you feel about social media? What's your general kind of mood when you think about it? I was expecting them to say, oh, I hate the thing, it grinds me down, it gives me an impossible, thing to live up to. But actually, they were both really positive about it, because they just said, well, social media has given me amazing opportunities that I wouldn't have this life if it weren't for social media, if it weren't for Instagram. And I was actually really surprised, because I was really genuinely expecting them to just be less enthused about it. I guess what they were saying is that this is, for them, it's a job. And when they communicate things on social media, they take social media for what it is. They don't take it for something that's far more significant than that. And I think that's quite key in an approach. That's something I have to work on for sure.
When you say you have to work on it, I've always considered that you're really well sorted when it comes to understanding social media. For example, your relationship with Fujifilm as an ambassador. I'd say part of that is due to, you understanding how their social media worked, and the two of you, I think, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, the two of you essentially taking each other out for lunch, metaphorically as well as probably personally as well, coming together as friends, as it were. Happened through a social media platform initially, didn't it?
No, that I think you're right. That's absolutely true. I kind of see it as a platform to make connections with people, and I try to be as authentic as you can be but you and I and people out there all know what the spectrum of authenticity really mean and all that. It's a different conversation altogether. But yeah, you're right. Lots of opportunities have arisen as a result of me being on there. I'm addicted to the thing, if I'm honest. Like, I'm on it quite often. I spend a lot of my time looking at my grid, making sure it looks like a good, consistent shop window for, for potential clients. And yes, that's exactly how I treat it. I treat it like a shop window, with the benefits of having random conversations with mates here and there, and commenting on strange cat reels and dog reels here and there.
Do you know, this is going to sound strange. Maybe it's quite hot in the UK at the moment. Maybe the heater's gone to my head. But the way you just described the shop window has brought up a picture immediately of my dear, beloved granddad, who owned a sweet shop. It's on the A10, but it was called the Great Something Road. Oh, it's just gone from my head. Anyway, on the A10. And Grandad had a proper confectioner's. So it was tobacconist as well, and you can put tobacconist in whatever department you want to put that in. But it was, in the days where these were the days when the Tottenham Hotspur players would pass by Grandad's shop and make sure they had enough cigarettes for the end of the match. Oh, how times have changed. But Grandad's shop window, this is what I'm getting to, was just glorious. And Grandad would spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that the Fry's window looked like a Fry's window. You've just described what my granddad did for a living for 50 years.
Well, I'm sure that my shop window looks a lot less appealing than your granddad's sweet shop window. I mean, that sounds really cool.
I don't know. But it's a good point. My long waffly part there was just to say, hang on a moment. When you start to reframe how you use social media, maybe it doesn't seem like the big bad monster at all.
No, and I think that a lot of it is about mindset, and that's why I wanted to kind of mention these two people that I'd spoken to, because they had a positive mindset. And, they were saying, well, this is part of the job, and any job's going to have aspects of it that are difficult and not very nice. But if you treat it as part of your job with a caveat of having conversation by the water cooler, which would be your conversations on there with some friends and whatnot, doesn't mean they're not friends, doesn't mean they're not authentic conversations.
What skills do you think you've learned through social media? I'm going to throw one in here as an example, that I think my writing has become better since I've had to think in 2,000 characters, as it were, or 2.5, or however many it is within Instagram, and far less for when I used to use Twitter.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought you'd said that, because I've always kind of thought of you as a natural, gifted writer anyway. Maybe actually people skills, funnily enough, and understanding how you can come across with words and how easily those words can be misinterpreted or interpreted well, or the tone that social media can envelop things in. So yeah, it's people skills, I guess, and making sure that what I say doesn't come across in a way that can be misinterpreted and turn on its head, which it often can, unfortunately, now.
If you would have been discussing the subject of social media with pupils, this is a conversation we've had actually in our house, because my wife, Sam, she talks to young inquiring minds about all manner of stuff, and that includes social media and how to deal and cope with social media. And we have a fairly, and it might surprise you and other people to learn, that we have a fairly loose arrangement with social media in terms of what we allow them to do. I think we allow them to have far more access to social media than some parents would feel is age appropriate. And I think that's going to surprise a lot of people, but I think we do that with an element of caution, in that I know social media reasonably well. I think I'm able to navigate those waters quite well. But with your teacher head on from the past, if you can imagine a class of students in front of you, what would your advice to them be about social media, how they use it, how they engage with it?
I suppose what I would probably do with my year 6, that was the number of, I spend most of my time with year 6 students, I would give them 20 photographs of like an event or their family time, and say, okay, which of these photographs do you want to show to people? And that would include photographs of, anything about life, of people having an argument or people brushing their teeth or anything that's mundane, and discussing why it is that we choose those particular photographs over others. And seeing their understanding that as soon as you start curating a narrative for your life, you're putting out a message out there. And therefore, if they're curating that, can they then understand that whatever they're seeing is not real?
Take your professional hat off for a moment. Put the hat of, I'm just doing this because it's fun on. You're not an ambassador for an international camera brand. You're not necessarily photographing weddings or families. You're photographing because you love photographing. How would you use social media in that respect?
That sounds lovely. No external pressure.
Yeah, have a year off.
Yeah, great. In all honesty, Neil, I don't think I'd be on the platform if I didn't have.
I wonder whether you might say that.
Okay, if I wasn't in the situation I'm in and I was still wanting to share the love of photography, I think it would be just completely inconsistent photographs. My grid would not make sense one iota. It would be a beautiful picture of a flower that I've taken one day and a picture of my dog the next day, and it would just be completely mishmash. And yeah, I'd probably express myself a lot more about politics than I do at the moment, because that's something that as an ambassador you try and do less of course, for all the right reasons. But yeah, it'd be a mishmash, and it'd probably be more negative as well as good. It'd be a better balance. But the reality of owning a business is marketing is generally quite a positive and enthusiastic part of life, and that's fine. If I was offered that for having a break, then that's what I would do. Mishmash and more opinions.
A mishmash on what platform?
Instagram, because I'm completely off Facebook now, so I've deleted my account.
And in many ways, there seems to be a cliffhanger moment there, doesn't there? Emily used to be one of our wonderful helpers with a Facebook group, but now, as you heard there, she's no longer on Facebook. Facebook is still an important, and I didn't realise until recording this episode, how important it is for certain parts of the world. you tend to think of what you use in your own backyard, but that consideration that certain platforms are used in different regions more than other platforms is something that I'd not properly considered. So Facebook is clearly popular or more popular in some regions than other regions. No poetry from the path this week. I'm taking your letters about social media alongside our guests, but I do have a Shutter Sync. So we'll continue that together. I'm not going to put Shutter Sync up on the show page today, for which I apologise, but there's quite a lot of work to do with this show as it is. But I will take the pictures that you've made over the last couple of weeks for our Shutter Sync across to next week's show. Is that okay? Can we have a show of hands, please? Over there at the back. I'm not counting the other listener. No. In fact, you're not even listening. The other listener's just... Have you drifted off again? Have you? Well, look, we'll take it through to next week, but we will do a Shutter Sync now. Now, the point of this is that every week I ask you to make a photograph to show me what you're doing as you listen to this show. And if it's anything like what we heard from Sarah a moment ago, it could well be just decorating, because that's how Sarah found the show back in 2021. So whatever you're doing, whether it be decorating or out on a walk, this is where you put down whatever. I put down my letters there, your thoughts, the notes for the show. Pick up your camera, and smartphones certainly count for this. And we're going to make a photograph all together, after which I'm going to ask you to send it into the show to stories@photowalk.show, which is the email address for your letters and your pictures. If you can resize your picture to 2,500 pixels wide, that will be fantastic. Otherwise, don't worry, I'll do the heavy lifting. But just make sure you send through the full resolution. I've been getting a few of late where emails have squashed it down to something so small you can hardly see it. So make sure they're full resolution or optimize them to 2,500 pixels. Right, that said, grab your camera or smartphone and lift it to your eye. Wherever you are now, wherever you're pointing yourself, don't save it for 5 minutes and think, oh, there's a nicer view just down the road. No, that's not the point of this. Lift your camera up, and I'm going to do a countdown from 3 to 1, and then we'll make a picture. For me, it's going to be more along this path. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, and click. That's our Shutter Sync for this week.
The Photo Walk assignment.
It's the last week to get your entries in for June's photo assignment. This month, the one-word photo assignment is imperfect, from John Dolan. As he suggested, he'd like us to work with the single word, imperfect. Consider making a picture, he said, that tells the truth without explaining too much. But remember, it does not need to be perfect. The moment is the key factor here. So good luck. Once again, the email address to send your picture to, and please make it just one photo for the assignment for each month, is stories@photowalk.show. It's the Photo Walk. Welcome along. Me with your letters and thoughts, our studio guests from around the world as well. Let's have some more of your thoughts on this special edition about social media. Here's Sir Michael of Mixonville. My favourite description, says Michael, of the internet comes from John DeVore. The internet is a giant Rube Goldberg machine that transports tiny scoops of rage from one place to another via a complicated system of gears, pulleys and levers. This description, says Michael, could easily be applied to social media, seeing as it dominates much of our engagement with the internet these days. And while rage is certainly one of the more popular flavours, we do have some influence over what goes into those scoops, you know. For me, that influence is inversely proportional to how much passive time I spend inside of social media's dopamine bubbles. When I'm mindlessly scrolling, letting the algorithm feed me spoonfuls of mathematically curated content, my experience is pretty consistently negative. I feel simultaneously empty and overstimulated. But when I choose to actually engage, taking more than milliseconds to look at a photograph, reading an entire post versus just, skimming it, leaving a thoughtful comment versus just smashing the like button, I come away with a far more positive experience. But this distinction also seems to apply to real life. Superficial interactions and extreme multitasking never result in rewarding experiences for me. I always feel so much more enriched after just a long conversation with somebody. Our modern world can be fragmented and chaotic, even without social media. And I think social media just turbocharges that feeling, pulling millions of additional people and bots into our daily orbit. If I'm self-aware and disciplined enough to interact with this virtual world the way I would want to, if it were actually in front of me, then I can reap the benefits of having my life expanded by meeting people and learning things I otherwise never would. When I don't do that, though, my frustrated self just wants to throw the manipulative Rube Goldberg machine out of the nearest window. Michael, really well written, as all of your letters are, but don't be throwing stuff out of windows. You never know who's just in the path below. But let's have another friend of the show talk on this subject. And I'm calling upon our Englishman in New York, Phil Penman. Now, social media has certainly helped him establish a business away from the genre he was working in as a full-time photographer. So this is a full-time photographer's viewpoint. With takeaways, I think, for those who don't make a dollar or dime from making pictures. That's what I hope comes from these conversations. Here's a short chat with our friend, Phil Penman.
If you don't mind, Phil, I'm going to read a few words that you wrote. Instagram pretty much said that they're no longer a photo sharing app, but brought us Threads instead. TikTok's on the verge of going away. Countless new apps have come onto the market, offering us new ways to engage with a worldwide audience. We all like to complain about social media and the computer algorithms, but we also have to remember that many of us probably, never would have had careers without it. How much do you personally owe your career to it, Phil, do you think? I mean, I'm not asking you to give a percentage or anything, but
62.7%.
If you could possibly do one, that would be great. I'll take 62. Yeah. But like many of us that work in the industry, without social media, it would have been a long walk, wouldn't it?
It's, I've been doing this 30 odd years, so I got to see the start of it, but I missed it. I was one of the late adopters to Instagram, the other social media platforms, because you take for granted that you've got to learn all the marketing stuff as well. You just figure, I'll just keep cranking out content. And also because of the world that I was in doing the celebrity stuff, you get sidetracked by that and the money side. But, once 2015, once I started going full on with this, the street photography stuff, there's no way I would have had the career I've been able to have without it.
What's the TikTok conversation on your side of the Atlantic, Phil? Because here in the UK, nobody quite yet has got their hand on the wire about to pull it out from the wall.
Oh, I think everybody knew it was going to go when they created it. It will disappear from certain countries. I started it, and then I think it was I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast where he read out the disclaimer, and it was like, hang on a second, I'm giving access to my phone, all the files on my phone, every device my phone is attached to, and all the files on those systems, so my desktop, laptop. I'm like, who in the right world would give away everything they have, all the contracts, all the NDA contracts I'm working on? Basically, you just said that person has access to it. Yeah. And then I just right, I'm getting off quick, because, you could go in much further, the fact that they were talk of intellectual property theft, and the fact that people are reverse engineering your product before you can even bring it to market because they've had access to your files. So I didn't want to be one of those people that spent all this time creating a platform there, and then to find it just gets yanked away by the government. You can see in the US, there's lots of people are suing the US government right now because of it. It's the same with Instagram though. You put all your eggs in that basket, and then what? They flip a switch, change the algorithm, and all of a sudden you've lost your livelihood, your family's income, I was adding, I don't know, 100 people a day. And then all of a sudden it was like negative 10 people a day. And I was like, well, I haven't done anything different. I'm still doing the work. I'm still getting out there and shooting, and I'm still posting consistently and doing what I figure to be right. But someone just flipped a switch. So I immediately was like, well, I can't get taken down by this. So, right, I'm going to get on LinkedIn. I'm going to get on Pinterest, Twitter, every platform, and just figure, right, hedge my bets. One goes down, at least I have an audience. I'm not going to lose all my money.
So what happened 4 years ago when you asked the question, why don't you like my work?
Yeah, 4 years ago, I released the book. I had about 45,000 followers. But what happened was I'd spent the best part of 6 years getting to build up a following of around 10,000 followers. And then in 1 year, it went from 10K to 45K.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to tell people, because I'm doing the teaching stuff, everyone's always asking about social media. And so I said, well, here are some practices that worked for me. This is some of the stuff that's happened for me over the year. And, people get so upset about, why doesn't anyone like my work? Is it the work that's bad? And I'm like, look, at the time, Sebastião Salgado had less followers than a lot of people that were on Instagram. So I was like, he's largely considered one of the greats, and he doesn't have anybody. So don't get so upset. So that was about 4 years ago. And then in the 4 years, it's gone from 45K to it just hit 250K.
It's amazing.
And I think 60K of that was in the last 3 to 4 months. It was purely like I had a couple of reels that went nuts, like the behind the scenes stuff that I do.
You are an advocate for, now not everybody wants to build their social media through video. There'll be plenty of photographers that saying, oh, please don't make me hit the video button. You've sort of circumvented that in some respects, and you make videos of the back of your camera, which is a clever, it's a clever way of doing it. So you haven't had to, as you suggested, you haven't had to employ an army of post-production individuals to work on your video content. But how important is the video to you, and making reels? And obviously, it's very important.
They said very clearly that we're no longer just a photo sharing app. We're now competing with TikTok videos. So, okay, if you don't like it, there's Glass, there's X, so there's all these other platforms that you can go on. Like Glass is great. Like there's a really good photography community on there. You pay like a subscription. Yeah. But if you want to be on Instagram, which is probably still the biggest one, if TikTok gets taken down, it will be even bigger. Because it's only going to explode more. You got to do it. And for me, it was like, well, I noticed whenever I did like these polished videos, like a minute long, no interaction at all. And then all of a sudden, I'll start filming the back of my camera and I'll show people how I take pictures. Yeah. 15 seconds, and they exploded. And I'm like, all right, well, I have to show you my work. And if this is the only way that I can show you my work, then this is what I'm going to have to do. Yeah. Same as anything. There's plenty of stuff that you don't want to do in life, but you have to do it because you want to get to a certain point. Like I never wanted to do celebrity photography, but I knew that if I didn't do it, I would be out of the country and I wouldn't be where I am now. It was like, all right, I'm just going to eat humble pie and just say, all right, I'm going to do this for a few years whilst I build my other career up and work on that. And then when I'm, got a big enough following and my work's out there, then I can quit.
Of course, you've already mentioned the D word, actually, diversification. How many platforms is enough? And it's more than one. I find sort of diversification sometimes leads to a bit of dilution, because you're thinking, well, how many jobs can I, how many platforms can I be on? What do I need to be on? What do I need to do if I want people to see my work? I don't think there's anything wrong, by the way. And I think often, we vilify people that say, I want to get my work seen, because it's either not very British, you may not be coming across this so much in your world anymore, or it's somehow it's not quite right that you should want people to see your work. So let's leave that shunted to one side. How many platforms is enough? What do you do to diversify? And how do you cope with diversifying?
I think they decide. We don't. I think it's different types of people on different platforms. If you look at the big corporates, they're posting 5-6 times a day on one platform. Yeah. Granted, okay, if you're a photographer, do you need to do that? Most of us probably aren't even shooting enough content to be able to do that.
No.
But the other question is, are you doing this for a living, or is this something for fun? If it's for fun, don't take it so seriously. But if it's your living and you're paying your bills and your rent, then you better take it bloody seriously.
You're a consistent poster. You know what you're doing. Do you have a figure in mind where you think, right, Phil, as I start this new week, I'm going to do this?
No, I know that I need to be doing, you have to do one a day. Like, I know that. One post a day and maybe 2 or 3 reels in the week, you know?
Do you enjoy doing it, Phil? Do you enjoy social media?
To an extent. I enjoy the fact that I've been able to communicate with people all over the world, people that I never would have met, friends, people that I can call friends now.
You wouldn't write an article like this had it not had some sort of effect in terms of how you think about yourself or your work. What are your thoughts on the impact of Instagram's algorithms on mental health and self-esteem and that,
it's horrific.
that sort of thing? How do you feel, Phil, about it? Now, you're somebody who knows how to use it. You've courted it. You've taken Instagram out for, I don't mean literally for lunch, but I'm talking about the algorithm. You're treating the algorithm to a nice deli sandwich sometimes by the looks of it. But how does it make you feel?
Oh, it's horrendous for mental health. Like I said, I think I'm one of the fortunate ones. You could see it in the way that people talk to each other. But it's now all of a sudden became okay because you're anonymous to just blurt something out. So, I love platforms like LinkedIn because your name and your job is there. You say something stupid, you're probably going to get fired. And I love that there's some kind of accountability. But otherwise, I've got plenty of people that have, it's really gotten to them.
Yeah.
And if you're someone that's teetering on the edge, that's not good. You don't know how it's going to play. Like I've lost a couple of friends in the last few months, and one of them, it was due to something related like this. And it's, I hope they do something about it. There has to be some consequences for this.
Yeah.
But it's not good.
You always finish every post with the experience of creating an image is more important than the final result. This is, as you suggest, what the real reason for making pictures is about. It's about making art. It's about making work, enjoying yourself, making the street portraits, making the street work, making connections. In your case, you made a good point about that. Not taking Instagram out for lunch, as I suggested just a moment ago. It's about making, isn't it?
Yeah, social media is a tool. That's it. This is about going out there, taking pictures, enjoying it, meeting people you wouldn't have met if it were not for the camera, seeing things that you would never see, going out early in the morning and seeing the world that you never normally would have bothered to do. And then, all right, well, now, like I said, we all like to complain a bit about it, but you now have a tool where you can share that work around the world. That didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So you just have to look at it. It's just a tool. The same as your camera is a tool. Very hard to separate the emotional part from it when you read something negative. Like, I've read stuff and it's gotten to me and it'll wind me up for 5 hours because it goes around in your head and then you'll forget about it and you don't even remember that even happened. But it's very hard to say don't let it get to you, because it does. It gets to me occasionally.
And my thanks sincerely to Phil for his time. Now, next month I was planning on doing a special on imposter syndrome, but I may well do something on street portraits instead, because something I recorded at the weekend for the Extra Mile, which was due to be this week's edition, has given me a few ideas. I went to a country show and I took my recorder, what I'm talking into now, and I started speaking to people that I wanted to photograph. Now, I don't think it's the collection of my finest interviews, but there are some funny moments, and I think there are some nice moments meeting people that I otherwise probably wouldn't have spoken with if I weren't either taking a photograph of them or recording a short couple of words with them about what they love. At this particular country show, there were exhibitors, and so I think I'm going to save that for the end of July. And I think we'll make that a special on street photography, talking with people, making street portraits. And I hope Phil Penman is going to come back and talk to us about that, because, well, he knows a lot about that particular subject. So thank you, Phil. And I look forward to hearing more from you. next month. The conversation continues about social media on the Extra Mile this week. I'll have some news about that shortly. Right, some thoughts about social media on this social media special. Remembering the full letter will be on the special photo essays page. This is one from Katie Dwight. Hi, Neil. I was so excited to read about your special walking edition, tackling the social media question. It's one I talk about a lot. I gave up teaching, in brackets, secondary English, because everyone always asks. Katie, I was about to myself. Last August, to work with my photography partner. If you go to Instagram, at @the_street_thief, I'll, of course, leave a link to that. Building a business where we work alongside other photographers to overcome the boundaries that stop them from taking great photos. Alongside photography, we run workshops, host a YouTube channel, and create zines. You see, you've given me a rabbit hole to happily divert down. I shall do some links on the show page today, of course. I took over the social media side of the business, which is at I Dare to Shoot, all one word, last May, with no real intention other than to build a community where we support photographers in line with our goals. We've grown from around 300 Instagram followers to nearly 4,000 in that time. That's extraordinary. Well done. And I've met some truly inspirational people, I'm sure you have, some of whom I chat to daily on the platform. See, that all comes back to this wonderful, can I call it mechanic, of being able to converse with people that you never otherwise would have had the opportunity to do. And I think that's something that's often forgotten about social media. Yeah, if you clear away all that noise, Katie, of the people that are sort of less than helpful or less than friendly on social, there are, as I think is true in the world, so many more good people than bad people. It's just that the bad people, or probably shouldn't use the word bad, should we say the noisy ones, the not so friendly ones, the unkind ones, they seem to make the most noise though, don't they? Anyway, back to the letter. I wasn't a photographer when I started this work. I still wouldn't consider myself as such. Oh, Katie. But the photos I see every day have had a huge impact on the way I see the world and on the kind of photos I aspire to take. But the biggest thing that I take from Instagram, despite the many comments and articles I read to the contrary, is the community that it makes me a part of. I have so many conversations about the mental health benefits of photography, of community, and of the power of sharing. I am genuinely connected to people, both online and now IRL. Katie, it will not surprise you to learn I did need to go and look that up before. I really could have worked it out, Katie, I know. I can see you raising your eyebrows at me saying, come on, Neil, get with it, would you? In real life, yes. And feel a real part of something, says Katie. So thank you. And I shall link to those Instas on the photo essays page that I've made for this piece. And I'll be sure, note to self, to put them on the show page for the actual episode as well. Right, next up, guest-wise. Well, I went walking with Neil Ford, actually. And he started this. Oh, you started it, Neil. It's all your fault. No, he posted something which I'll not say now because we're going to talk about it in our conversation. But it was what really started me thinking, we should do a special on that, an actual social media special. So here's my conversation with, I call him head of IT. He is. He's head of anything that whirs and makes noises and deserves a reboot from time to time. This is my conversation, just a short conversation as I walked with Neil Ford about social media and his relationship with it. This whole program, Neil, is predicated on a couple of words from an Instagram post that you wrote. And I read it. It was early morning when I read it. And I thought, I wonder how many other people feel exactly how Neil feels. The essence was, I'm putting my post up here. I haven't felt like it for a while, not quite sure whether it will make any difference. That's how I read it. Do you want to correct me with what you actually said?
I wrote, took a break from posting here primarily because I was questioning the point of it all. Still not fully decided, but for now we'll be making the occasional post.
I read that to mean that you'd sort of not necessarily fallen out of love with Instagram, but you were questioning why you were doing it. And I think so many people feel this way. It's why was I doing this in the first place?
Yeah, I think that probably was. It was definitely with that particular account, which is because I've got two. So I've got one which I use predominantly for my events coverage, so park runs and other events. That's one account. And then I set the second one up, which was for sketchbook images, the day-to-day stuff, the something and nothings that I go out and take, and I just wanted to keep them separate. So I did that, and then I was kind of going, but why am I posting these? Because I've never looked at the proper engagement numbers, but they never seem particularly great. I know people say nice things and I get a few likes here and there, but it was like, why am I doing this? Some of it stems from the fact that, I'm not the world's greatest consumer of photography, as I think we've previously talked about, because I don't remember pictures, so therefore I don't.
This is all coming back to the aphantasia, isn't it?
All back to aphantasia and being aphantasic and not having visual memories.
Yes.
So I don't look at pictures to remember them or anything like that. Therefore, my engagement with Instagram is very transitory. And therefore, it's like, well, why am I inflicting what I do on people? Well, why am I taking up people's time with what I do for no reason or no benefit's the wrong word.
In other words, then, with your, because it was the sketchbook account I was looking at, the question there wasn't so much this falling out of love with Instagram or wondering why you were sort of putting things on Instagram full stop. It was more that it didn't really, the pictures you were posting, didn't you feel have or furnish any particular reason for somebody to engage with them. I mean, we're looking at now, I'm walking with Neil on Greenham Common. You know we love Greenham Common, myself and Barney Barnes is here as well. And there are the old nuclear silos. So that would be of interest to somebody, wouldn't it?
It would be, but
you're worried that you'll be taking up other people's time.
Well, yes, and then, you take these pictures, and then, but how do you find the person that's interested? And that's becoming the bigger problem.
Hashtag.
But the hashtags don't work. I don't think they work as well as they used to. No, I just don't. I don't think they do. I don't think that they get as much traction as they used to. Or it's got to be, you keep going round and round, especially with Instagram, you play all these games, it's like, too many hashtags, too few hashtags, what's the right number, and then figuring out which are the right ones to use. And it just becomes this whole kind of, almost a treadmill.
Let's look at the wider, Barnes, come over this way, keeps crossing in front of us. Come on, this way, come on. Yes, I know, come on. This way. We went to have lunch just a moment ago, myself and Neil. Don't tell anybody in our household, but he had half my sausage bap. Not Neil, the dog, that is. Neil had his own lunch. At least I think he did.
Yes.
Unless Barney stole yours as well. Anyway, so social media outlets that you like and those that you have abandoned. Yes, that's the right word. I think Twitter would be the first one. Or I know we're supposed to call it X. I just can't get out the habit of calling it Twitter.
Dumpster fire that is X.
The toxic dumpster file.
Yeah, fire. It's just
fire.
No. I mean, I log into X to post once a week for the photo walk, and that's it. Having gone from being one of the very earliest people on Twitter,
early adopter,
very early adopter, and even Facebook. I mean, Facebook, really, my interaction with Facebook is the photo walk group,
and that's it.
And that's about it.
Well, look, okay, because we're approaching the gate that takes us out of where we've been walking. I will ask you one question then. If you could design the perfect social media outlet for you, what would it look like?
I don't think there is one. Sorry, I don't think there is. I think we've moved beyond what, if it was anything, it was Twitter 10 years ago, when that was the only game in town. when there wasn't this plethora of. It's interesting. I mean, we were talking earlier. We talked about this thing that
Come on, Barnes, this way.
Instagram are now automatically tagging posts as made with AI and all this kind of stuff.
yeah.
And it's like a friend of mine posted yesterday. I can't remember where she did. It might have been Facebook. She's just signed up for another. It's for artists by artists, and it's a free platform. I think it's called Cara, and it's art. But the idea was they won't allow generative AI works and stuff like that. But it's yet another platform. It's again diluting the user base because nobody has enough time to check all of these things all day, every day. So you end up, you sign up for something and then 3 weeks later you stop using it because you can't do this 24/7. This is the problem. All of these platforms, there's now too many of them, and it was always going to happen because it's technology, and people will reinvent the wheel and think they're making improvements, and things will change and grow, and you get more competition. But ultimately, you then start to, you dilute the effectiveness, and they all just. And I think that's the issue. It's fine for all these new platforms that are coming and great, and I hope they're all success. But the problem is, which ones do you post to? It's pressure and noise, and I don't need that. I just don't need it anymore. So that was the reason why I kind of went, why am I pressuring myself to post to Instagram? No, just knock it on the head. Took a break, and then I looked back and that one's not bad. I posted a couple of pictures.
And my thanks to Neil Ford for the idea for this episode, for starters, and for talking with me, and for all the work that he puts in voluntarily on this show. It really is appreciated. You've become a friend, not just of mine, but also of my family, I feel, Neil. But the time that we spend together, we must go and do another photo walk as well soon, actually. Last time we did one was in Bath. We're due for another. This in front of me is lovely. Let me get a picture. Now, I saw something recently on YouTube. Now, I don't get influenced into these kind of products much, and I want to make a very quick photo, then I'll tell you the story. So I'm using my X100. So I'm using my X100V today. There's light just dappling in and kissing a tree just along the path. F4, shutter speed 400th, ISO 160, and I've underexposed by a lot, nearly 4 stops, to allow just the sun hitting the vegetation, everything else falling off. But, and here's the thing I saw on YouTube, I'm not sure how green it is. I haven't bought one anyway, but at this moment, smoke in a can. Oh, Neil. Smoke in a can. Yeah, smoke in a can. Real. And you spray it. I think it's actually environmentally friendly, smoke in a can, although being in a can doesn't make it environmentally friendly. So you and I have already talked myself out of this one, but smoke in a can, I would have sprayed it there, with the sunlight coming through, would have had the beams, the shafts of light. I'm going to look up how environmentally friendly that can actually is. If it is, and if Greta would let me have it, then it could be something to put in my camera bag. Oh, Neil, I can't believe it. Smoke in a can. Come on. Right, back to your letters. 2 more guests to come, including the concluding part of Sean Tucker's chat. Paul Friday's longer letter about social media will be on that special photo essays page today, linked to on the show page for this edition, though I was drawn to his postscript in the letter. Quite serious stuff, this. So settle back, class. But I wanted to read this to you. I was recently, says Paul, at a literary festival. That's me, born to be mild. One presenter described the audience as looking like a cruise ship had arrived in port, meaning it was all the middles, class, age and England. And yet there was a security bag check to get onto the site and security people by the stage for some of the presenters. Most of the presenters mentioned that they'd been threatened on social media, some with death threats, hence the security. It comes to something when historians can't speak about their work in safety. One speaker was a journalist and was asked to comment on something during the end of talk questions. They declined, on the grounds that they couldn't face another few thousand insults and threats on Twitter. So, And it looks like social media is an experiment that's failed. It's become toxic. Ideally, we would all walk away and join small communities of shared interests where we might challenge each other's ideas, but never their person. Although social media, well, it is addictive, and you can only leave if your friends agree to leave as well. Anyway, the nurse is coming around with the dried frog pills, so I'll get this missive into an envelope and consign it to the ether. Up the revolution, as long as there's somewhere to get a cup of tea and a sit-down. Regards from Paul. Paul, I love the letter. I know it's a serious subject, and I think your letter, there's a few letters actually, I want to take into a particular YouTube film that I've started planning. Another one of your planned YouTube films, Neil, I know. Along with a smoke in a can, it'll come. So to another of our regular friends of the show for this episode. Once a month we hear from Valerie Jardin, who is a professional photographer, certainly has thoughts on the subject of social media. Although as before, I think, pro or amateur or whatever label we stitch onto our human description, I do think there are some important, as they say, takeaways when it comes to just the general subject of social media. So here's this month's conversation with Valerie Jardin.
Valerie, away from the norm of looking at pictures and talking about pictures, although undoubtedly we'll come back to that next month when we do our visual stories. Now, this month we're doing a special on social media, as you know, and really I'd like to just gauge your thoughts about how you use social media, what you feel about social media, what it does right, what it does wrong. And also, well, I'll start with a question. If there was a way of running your business without social media, would you run for the hills shouting, "I can't stand this anymore"?
I actually enjoy it. I'm in the opinion that less is more. Mm-hmm. So I left Facebook, for example, years ago, never looked back, never missed it. I missed a few birthdays, but but I never missed the platform. And I really focused on Instagram. And Instagram has been good for me. I enjoy the community. I don't spend a lot of time. I think that's the danger. There are two dangers with social media, I think. One, to shoot for an audience. Two, to spend too much time on it. So if you can manage those two things, it's a good experience.
I'd be intrigued then to know how you work with Instagram. So Instagram is your chosen platform. You don't do Twitter, or X as we're supposed to call it.
I used to, actually. I still have my account and I peek once in a while.
Yeah, but you don't, like me, I don't do Twitter. I know you're supposed to call it X, but I still can't get over
it's still Twitter.
Yeah, it's still Twitter to me.
Yeah.
Let's park that one to one side. So you don't do that. You don't do Vero. I know you don't do Vero.
I have a Vero account. I don't think it ever really took off.
Yeah.
I find it a bit boring, to be honest. I probably post every 3 or 4 weeks. But I do. I got an account right away, thinking, oh, maybe that's the next big thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think so, which is too bad. And then Threads. To me, Threads is another Twitter, and I never posted pictures on Twitter. I pretty much posted links. So occasionally I'll do a link, but I really focus on Instagram.
So let's get behind a day in the life of Instagram for you. You've got a picture to post. What's important to you? What do you do? How do you hashtag it? And what do you write? What do you write up? Is there any kind of format to this at all?
Like for everything else, I'm so spontaneous and I really follow my heart. I don't really have a method. I'm learning about hashtag because I think they're important. It's important to do it right. And I've tried different ways, like keeping the same hashtag all the time or changing them or having them generated by AI. That's the way to do it. So every time you do something, for example, I was just teaching in New York, so I had like 10 days of New York pictures. So trying to do, give me the most popular hashtag for New York street photography, for example.
Yeah.
And to see if it would make a difference. Honestly, I don't see the difference. So I'm not sure this works. I didn't really see much of a difference. However, reels make a difference. So I'm trying to do more of those, maybe a reel every week. And that gets a lot of non-follower engagement. I can see that a reel will get sometime 60% from engagement from followers and 40% from non-followers. Doesn't mean that those non-followers will automatically follow you. It depends on the reel, but that's a good way to get visibility from outside, I believe.
Interestingly, you are another of my friends that posts putting whiteboard. Well, you use whiteboarders. Some people use blackboarders. You use whiteboarders to make sure that that you can see the pictures as the photographer intended them to be seen. Now, this bugs me about Instagram.
Well, it's kind of a pain. It's an extra step. I looked at different apps for it, and the one that was the quickest is called Witagram. You do it really quickly after a while. I like to put a caption, so sometimes I will write an entire paragraph, sometimes two, sometimes it's just a title. It all depends, and it all depends the time I have. And I have my Instagram set that it disappears after 20 minutes, so I have to be pretty quick.
Is that what you? Do you know, you're not the first person I've talked to that said I time myself out.
Yeah. And so there's several ways to do it. Mine, I can actually hit the no stay on button. Yeah. So if I'm in the middle of putting a reel together and it takes me that long, I can stay on. But there are some that actually you cannot even open the app at all after so many minutes. And I think that's important, because if you look at how much time you spend scrolling in a day, I think that's really a waste of time. It's good to look at other people's work, but you don't have to do that for 3 hours, which I'm sure a lot of people do.
I have friends, photographer friends, that use Instagram as a business tool, but they also put their personal stuff up on that same grid, and also pictures of cameras. It's not necessarily related to their number one business activity. You are very faithful to what you do. I know what you are, who you are, when I come to your Instagram. What are your thoughts on expanding that into perhaps putting up pictures of your family or the dog?
Oh no,
Luna,
that would
for
never
example.
happen. Luna has her own. Luna has her own account.
But tell me why you don't mix it all in one pot.
Actually, I just opened another Instagram account a couple weeks ago called Contemplative Art. For my non-street photography work or non-documentary photography work, because I love that part of what I do as well, but it doesn't really mix so well. I used to mix it, and then I decided, let's just dedicate one account just to that. Yeah. And so that's fun, but that's one more to manage besides the dogs, because I'm her manager. I post like once a month, so it's okay. She doesn't complain too much. Yeah, I think you have to be true to yourself. And I think people know me well enough. I mean, I podcasted for 8 years. So people who follow my work, people who come on my workshop, they know me before they meet me in person. And so I don't want them to think, oh, that's not the same person that I read every day on Instagram. No, they see me, they meet me, and I'm the same person. So being true to yourself, especially if you run a business, is so important. And follow your heart. I know what people want to see. If I post a picture of my camera, it's going to have 5 times more likes and engagement than a beautiful street photograph that has a lot of merit in it. And so I will do in stories once in a while, but not as a post or an unboxing. It's like, I hate those. It's like nobody even knew I had an X106 until they started looking at the hashtag, because I never did a post about the camera. Like, no, it's a tool. It's a camera. I'm not, I'm not going to do the unboxing thing. I hate that kind of stuff. It's just not me.
All right, come on then. What's Luna's? I follow your other one, but I didn't know Luna had one. So what's Luna's? Come on.
Okay. Luna, the underscore, love.20.
LunaLove.20.
Because she was born in 2020.
All right, I've got it straight away. Oh, I've seen a few of my friends follow you. They knew about this already. Okay. Look at that. Now, Barney, I want you to close your eyes here, because I'm going to have to check. Now, I haven't posted to Barney's for forever. And all those people say, oh, God, they have their own profiles for their dogs. Good grief. I'm going to look at Barney's, which is Sir Barkalop. Barney, you've got 85 followers. Luna,
Wow.
No, not wow, because Luna has 376, and she only posts once a month.
She posted a lot more when she was a puppy. Now she hates, and I only use my phone, but if she sees a phone, she literally gets up and runs. She hates phones, so she's impossible. It's easier if I have my camera. It's easier to photograph her on camera. She doesn't run from the camera, but she runs.
I'm going to put a link for this on the show page. I love the one of her disappearing under what looks like a seat or possibly a dress or something. All you see is her tail poking out. There's some gorgeous pictures on here. You know, you should be a photographer. Have you ever thought about it?
And my thanks to Valerie Jardin for having a conversation with me. Next month's conversation is about street photography, street portraits, making street portraits. Valerie will fit perfectly into that conversation for that special, along with Phil Penman and other friends of the show. As I'm walking along the path, you'd be forgiven for thinking we're recording this episode. We found our time-travelling machine. There's a subject I'll talk about on next week's show. In the autumn. It does sound like it, doesn't it? The leaves are crisp and dry. But honestly, it is June 28th edition of the Photo Walk. A special on social media. The end of the month now will be specials on particular topics. Next month, as I say, street photography. We will do one on imposter syndrome. I think that's a really important, a very important subject to tackle. The letters that I haven't been able to use today will be used across the coming weeks and months. So if you haven't heard your one today, do not fear, it will be coming up. Right. Just a couple more left. Here's one from C.K. Hicks. My relationship with social media, Neil, is complicated. I used to post very regularly based upon whatever I could capture with whatever phone I had at the time. But since having a family and shooting more film, well, my uploads are more infrequent, more private, and much less spontaneous. As I listen to you talk about it on the show, please bill me for therapist hours. It's all part of the service, CK. I feel that I should be less nervous about posting the same ways that I have in the past. Perhaps whatever I find interesting and compelling should be there, regardless of changes in interests, cameras, or seasons of life. Amen to that, CK. Amen to that. Finally, for the letters for this show, Christopher Parsons, or the letters on this occasion, because as I say, we're going to carry these over the next few weeks and months. Your letters have been just wonderful. They really have. So considered and so thoughtful. And Christopher actually gave really considered thought to this subject, so I'm delighted to include his whole letter on our special page for it that I've set up on the photo essays page, which I'll link to on the show page as well. And I do want to include a few thoughts of his here, particularly about likes, as it's been a fair part of our conversation today. It's easy, says Christopher, to say that likes have done bad things to photography, but I really don't know that that's fair or even necessarily correct. There are a lot more people making photographs than ever before. And part of the process tends to be learning how other people tried to make images. How many of us spent time to figure out how to make silhouettes? ? And with the like metric, you can get a rough guesstimate of whether you're getting better and better at this kind of classic image. The same is true for lots of other standard kinds of images, and I think that's great. People are better photographers on average today than ever before. We should celebrate that more often than we tend to. Christopher's letter has a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of things to consider and think about. And as I say, I've put it in the photo essays piece in full today. But Christopher, I think, in fact, I know that I'm going to be returning to your thoughts more thoroughly in a YouTube film about this. And I think this fits perfectly into Sean Tucker's second and final piece of our conversation that we recorded. Here's part 2 of my chat about social media with a quite unique why at the end. Slight spoiler alert, with Sean Tucker.
I'm not sure how relevant this next point is to everybody who uses social media, because the contact we receive from those who view our work, it varies greatly. And not everybody will have negative feedback, certainly to the level that you've received yourself, Sean. It's a subject we've talked about in previous podcasts and something you've dealt with, I know, on your YouTube channel when talking about how to deal with negativity. So this, I suppose, in many respects, is me asking you for advice on how you've dealt with it and how you've learned to deal with it.
Yeah, so a couple of things to acknowledge. Like, one is, if you get negativity, if you get people attacking your work, it's usually a good sign. I know that sounds weird, but trolls don't have time for people unless there's already a little buzz around what they're doing. That's when they come around. Like, I don't have as many trolls these days, and I didn't in the first year at all. But the minute what I was doing started to get a little bit of traction, they came around and attacked for a good 18 months, 2 years. I think it's often a sign that you're doing something right. That's the first thing to acknowledge. The next thing is that you very rarely find a talented troll. And you'll know this. Like, if someone starts saying mean things about your work, usually if you go to their profile, it's anonymous. There's no photograph of them. It's not their real name, and there's very little work to show. So now you have to think about who's attacking you and why are they attacking you? What's their motive behind that? And it's usually another frustrated creative. It's somebody who's been trying for years to get their work seen, and they're not getting it seen. They're trying to move their work up, as it were, to get more and more attention on it. So instead of the fact that they've hit this wall and it's not working for them, so instead of trying that further, which they feel is a waste of time, their new tactic is to run around and try bring everybody else down to their level.
Yeah.
And in the process, get people feeding back, going, hey, that's an aggressive comment. Let me go out of interest, see what their profile's doing. And they're getting people visiting their profile. It's just an attention tactic. So when you realize that as well, that person, I mean, it's very easy to push back. And by the way, like, I've made the mistake many, many times of having a go at people and pushing back with them. You know, I don't struggle with it. There's a part of me that likes it. It's a fun fight to have. But I also realized at a point that I might be intellectually bullying people, because I also thought, imagine who this, horrible comment that came my way is coming from. I'm assuming it's somebody like a mentally healthy adult who's out there, who's just a photographer who's just having a go. But there's more chance that comment is coming from a teenager who is struggling with mental health at home, just not sure how to make their way in life. And now, as a middle-aged man, easily able to squash this comment and make a fool of him, what am I doing by pushing back with him? I'm just a bully at that point. So the way that I deal with it practically nowadays, if I see a comment come through that's an aggressive comment like that, there's two functions, one on Instagram, one on YouTube. They do exactly the same thing. Instagram has hide user from channel, which is just a button you click next to a comment. The commenter can still see their comment hanging there. Nobody else can except me.
Right.
And I won't respond to it. So it hangs in air. They won't get the oxygen they want from that comment. And on Instagram, you have restrict user. So you basically hit restrict user for that person's account. They can see their comments. Nobody else can see it except me. I can see every time they post. And I've had somebody on my account who's posted almost every single image for the last 8 months. He posts a horrible comment on my images, trying to get some traction and attention for it. He's really, really persistent and very, very angry. Yeah. But I'm not going to give it oxygen. I'm not going to push back because I could be a bully. I'm just going to let it hang there. It's not worth responding to. I've learned enough times. You're never going to turn somebody around and have a good conversation if that's how they start.
Let's move the conversation to what happens next with social media. What platforms that you see that are upcoming that you think, oh, I'd like to be a part of that. I got very excited, for example, for 5 minutes when Vero came along. We have a Vero account, and I had and still have high hopes for that platform.
The thing with social media is the reason it works is because it's the place where people hang out. It's the reason I don't post my videos to my website hoping people visit it to watch the videos. I post it to where I know people hang out the most to watch videos, which is YouTube. Now, The problem is, like, I'd love these monopolies to get broken up and there to be more options. But, you know, when Vero pops up, it picked up traction early on, but then people realized, oh, but people are still hanging out mostly on Instagram. So I'm going to go back there and keep posting. They've got a stranglehold over where people are sharing particular media formats. And we had that little wobble a while ago, maybe a year or two ago, where Instagram made a big algorithm tweak and everyone had a tantrum, said, we're going to Vero. And they did for about 2 weeks. And then they went back to Instagram.
Yeah.
So people are going to always follow the crowd and post. It's why I don't post videos to Vimeo. Vimeo is a lovely platform, but there's no community hanging out there. So
It's difficult as well to be Pepsi to a Coke, isn't it?
and it's also not even as close as Pepsi and Coke. It's like some like Fritz Cola versus Coke. You know, it's like a very niche corner of the market. It's very difficult to break these. I mean, the reason we post is because we want the most people to see it. So we go to where the most people are hanging out every day.
Yes.
I don't know what happens. I would love to see social media platforms pop up that aren't algorithm driven. Some have tried to do it. And then I would love to see everyone have the courage to jump to those platforms without the algorithm stuff, that make that promise and we're going to hold them to it. We're all going to bail to a new one if they break it later, which lots of them do break those promises. But if we all went and we all stuck and supported those platforms that were more, we're going to see the work we follow, not what you think we're interested in because of AI and algorithms and a bunch of ads. And we rewarded those platforms for doing that and built real communities there. I think it would be healthy. The best talk I've seen, and this is worth looking up actually, recently about the future of social media, is a talk called The Death of the Follower by Jack Conte, who
It was a very good one, yes.
Yeah, who's the CEO of Patreon.
Yes, he is, yeah.
His theory is, and he makes a very good argument for how building followings around your work on these social media platforms was more possible at the beginning, but is becoming less and less possible because of how aggressive the algorithms are, and is very, very hard to do these days. His theory is that membership sites will be the way of the future, that we will join these membership sites and set up platforms that are our platforms that we run, that will have smaller audiences, but they'll be more engaged and more financially supportive, and we'll be able to sustain ourselves with just that core audience rather than the big numbers on big social media platforms. He thinks that's the way things will go in the future. But again, he says you'll still need the social media platforms to draw people to those membership platforms, and that might be a balance that works in the next 10 years. But it's well worth watching that if you're interested, and he's got some good points.
I'm going to try and find, not that I'm trying to balance this film with another one or raise you on that at all, but and I can't remember the figure, so I'm just going to wildly say a figure, and it may well be wrong. Do not place stock in the figure I'm about to say. But I watched another film on YouTube that I must search for, I was fascinated by, which was all about the time we spend searching for things. The wild figure I'm going to make up is that 7 days in our life are spent a year deciding what to watch on television, choose on Instagram to watch, YouTube to watch rather, how we navigate Instagram. Because these are all essentially, even though there are adverts and stuff placed in front of our eyes, they're still essentially choice platforms. We choose what we want to watch and what we want to engage with. TikTok, of course, has turned that on its head. And it said, we don't believe you do need to choose because you're wasting so much. You're wasting 7 days of your life a year. So let me give you back 7 days. That's very nice of me. And instead, I'm going to tell you what I think you should be watching. And there was a core belief in this person I was listening to from the business world that was suggesting that's the way it could go. And then you watch out that Spotify, they'll do a Spotify or they'll do a Netflix. No longer will you think,
already have.
You know, what do I want to watch? I'll be given. Have they?
Yeah, well, Spotify now has Spotify DJ. I don't know if you've seen this, where you basically turn on the DJ function and you have an AI sounding voice, which sounds amazingly human, saying, "Oh, I'm going to tell you what I think you'll like to listen to," and it starts playing you songs. And if you don't like it, you'll skip. And the DJ comes back and goes, "Oh, okay, you're not really into that. Let's try this. Let's take the tempo up." And like proper Neil James stuff, like proper DJing.
I could like to say that's not me.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to listen to. And it brings up some interesting things. This is the problem with AI now. And all the platforms are doing this. When we talk about algorithms, we're actually talking about AI. Is what TikTok has done is, rather than have a search engine, it's just calculating how long it takes you to swipe through that video because you don't like it through to the next one. And it's clocking those times. he liked this for 5. He stuck around with this the whole way through for 30 seconds. This one was in it. And it's all that data is, so you are actually searching, but you're searching by being presented one video after another. And in that interaction you have with it, it's learning what you like very fast. Now, YouTube and Instagram and all the others are going the same route, which is why less and less of our work is being seen. Because whereas 5 years ago, someone hit a subscribe button or a follow button to see my work and it would come down their feed, now that's all been turned off and it doesn't care what you've hit subscribe to or follow to. It's just calculating how long you take to look at images and videos and what you like and don't like. And it's only showing you that stuff. So if I subscribed to a channel 5 years ago, then they post a new video today, there is no chance I will see it. Even if I subscribed, even if I clicked a bell, it doesn't matter, because it will only show me what I've been viewing this week in the immediate short-term attention span. And that's why it's the death of the follower. The followers don't matter anymore. They've tightened up that thing and made it like, what's he interested in right now? Let's just show him that stuff. We don't care what he's followed in the past. That's the big switch that's happened. And they're all doing that. All the social media platforms are doing that.
It's a sobering thought. You'll know by now that I end my interviews with one question, and that question's always why. And I've asked you why probably half a dozen times now, so I'm not going to ask you to do that again, and it's probably not relevant to this one in terms of you answering it. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, but of all the people that I've invited onto this program to talk about social media, I think you're the only one that I think might not sort of go and sit in a corner and bury their head. That's perhaps unfair. That's unfair to the others that might have said, yeah, I'd like to have a go at that question. So I'm going to stick with why. I want you to imagine for a moment if there was such a thing as an overarching entity called social media. I can never say this word, what's the word?
Anthropomorphized.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can never say that. I must learn to say that word one day. We've anthropomorphized, is that the right word?
Anthropomorphized. It's a tough one.
We've made it a thing, a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
What do you think social media might say if I asked it why?
That's a difficult one, because it's the first thing that comes to my mind is this just trendy businessman, that. And if you're asking the trendy businessman why are you doing what you're doing, it is just a money consideration. That's how I think about social media. Is they're only businesses that I get to use to share my work to greater or lesser success depending on what it decides it's doing. So I have very little control. It's quite self-contained and selfish. It doesn't really concern itself with me, but I get to use it for the things I want. So whatever answer I give you is going to sound really doom and gloom. It's going to be very uncaring and unfeeling. I think it doesn't, but that's probably a good thing for us to have in our head. I think we think it owes us something, Like, oh, but don't you love my artwork? Isn't your whole purpose Instagram to share beautiful photographs? No, it doesn't care. All it's doing is making money for its shareholders. And the minute we get that in our head, maybe we get to go, oh, well, maybe I just shouldn't expect that much from it and just use it while it works for me. And then we turn down the pressure on ourselves. Maybe that's the way to deal with it. I don't think social media has much to offer us consciously. We can utilize it, but it's not concerned with me. I mean, if my channel disappears tomorrow, YouTube's not calling me going, oh, no, wait, don't go. It couldn't care less. It didn't even notice I disappeared. There's no concern from their side about us. Yeah. It's just a business. And that's good to keep in mind for us.
I'll just lighten it then. I will add in just one more thing in a Columbo fashion. Why aren't you dancing on TikTok?
You don't want to see that, believe me. I'm doing you a massive favor.
And my thanks sincerely to Sean Tucker and all the guests who featured on today's photo walk, and the letters that you sent in as well about the subject of social media. Let me make one last picture today, one last sketchbook. Now I'm going to do one of my looking up through the trees shots. Don't look into the sun, Neil. I know I'm trying not to, but there's a lovely flare coming through this tree, the canopy overhead. So I'm going to go to f8 so I can get a bit of a starburst. And then I'm going to sort of do this the starburst dance as you rock backwards and forwards trying to catch the beams coming through the trees. Oh, it's not as big a starburst as I thought. Neil, what you need is a starburst filter and a can of fog. Right, f8 1900 shutter speed, 160 ISO. There we go. A sketchbook at the end of the show. Oh, I've thrown my notes into the nettles. Oh, ow! Caught my little pinky as I picked up the notes and your letters there. And that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and want to walk a little further together, then the Extra Mile edition, number 95, is waiting for you. I'm going to continue the conversation with friends Giles Penfound, Mally Davis, and perhaps a few more of your thoughts as well.
On this week's Extra Mile.
Is it a love-hate relationship? I think it's a love complete indifference, complete sort of questioning of what's the point. But then, yeah, I don't quite know, to be honest with you.
But you use it now. When I say you use it, I don't think you use it for commercial purposes. But you certainly, I think you're enjoying showing your Hometown Stories work.
Yeah, no, that's it. So all I show on both Instagram and Facebook are the Hometown Stories.
Yeah.
And I post one a day, just during the week. I don't post on weekends. And I suppose the best way I could say is I've kind of found my peace with social media.
But again, there's nothing wrong with likes, nothing wrong with being appreciated. And I think sometimes people then might go off and think, do you know what? I've only got a 28mm lens that's a f5.6 or f4 to 6.3. Do you know what? I'm going to give it a try. It's clear night tonight. Yeah. They go out, they might get some noctilucent clouds, they might get some star trails. But there you go. Wow, there's people all over the place just probably doing something because you've done something, or you're doing something because you've saw someone else do something. And this connected infinite loop of people feeding off each other.
There's no play-out song today. As such, I wanted really to sign off with some music, but with a recap of some of the thoughts that you've heard today in the style we started with, really. I suppose a bookend to our special about social media. And these thoughts form also our postscripts that we usually have. Maybe longer in style, but all the same. I'd like to thank those whose letters I've featured. If your letter has not been featured yet, it will in the weeks to come. And thank you, as ever, to Neil Ford, who looks after IT and all the lights that buzz and flash and do things I never quite understand. Andrea Gilpin for looking after Instagram, making sure we stay on the straight and narrow with it. And in terms of Facebook, to Kelly Mitchell for being there, looking after those who join and joining in the conversation on that platform. I'll be back walking again with you next week on this show. I'm walking back towards Car and walking back through the Triffids of Berkshire. I tell you what, if I'm not back with you next week, you'll find me at this address, The Path at Brimpton, eaten by a Triffid, England, land.
Okay, if I wasn't in the situation I'm in and I was still wanting to share the love of photography, I think it would be just completely inconsistent photographs. My grid would not make sense one iota. It would be a beautiful picture of a flower that I've taken one day and a picture of my dog the next day.
I enjoy the fact that I've been able to communicate with people all over the world, people that I never would have met, friends, people that I can call friends now.
If I took likes seriously, that would mean that I'm a worse photographer now than I was 4 years ago. But that's not true, because I get less likes on images. But that's not true. It was an algorithmic change. So then what does the number even matter? It doesn't say anything about the image at all, useful to me. You tweaked it, you messed around with it too much. I think it's a distraction, and I turn it off to say, just look at the image. You decide if you like it or not. And by the way, I don't go check on my images how many likes they got. Even for myself, I don't look.
It's good to look at other people's work, but you don't have to do that for 3 hours, which I'm sure a lot of people do.
Instagram are now automatically tagging posts as made with AI and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's like a friend of mine posted yesterday, I can't remember where she did, might have been Facebook. She's just signed up for another, it's for artists, by artists, and it's a free platform. I think it's called Cara. And it's, it's art, but it's the idea was they won't allow generative AI works and stuff like that. But it's yet another platform. It's, again, diluting the user base, because nobody has enough time to check all of these things all day, every day.
Social media is a tool. That's it. This is about going out there, taking pictures, enjoying it, meeting people you wouldn't have met if it were not for the camera, seeing things that you would never see, going out early in the morning and seeing the world that you never normally would have bothered to do.
I just think it would be a better world if we killed the score around our work and just took in images as what they are. Does it make you think something? Do you like the colours or the aesthetics, or did it hit you at a particular point in the day where you needed a lift because you felt it was saying something to you?
And follow your heart. I know what people want to see. If I post a picture of my camera, it's going to have 5 times more likes and engagement than a beautiful street photograph that has a lot of merit.
I mean, if my channel disappears tomorrow, YouTube's not calling me going, well, no, wait, don't go. It couldn't care less. It didn't even notice I disappeared. There's no concern from their side about us.
Lots of opportunities have arisen as a result of me being on there. I'm addicted to the thing, if I'm honest. I'm on it quite often. I spend a lot of my time looking at my grid, making sure it looks like a good, consistent shop window.
Numbers on social media do not equal value. Popularity does not equal mastery. That's not how it works. Just because something you do is popular does not mean it's good. It just means it's popular. And if we start to recalibrate and go, I'm going to make good work and stop worrying about how popular it is, that then becomes a pathway to, I think, making more meaningful work and to more mental health.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.